Hello, patrons and subscribers, and nice people that I haven't met yet. I'm Random Rob. Welcome back to the new show. Today I'm talking about super intelligent ants taking over a valley in Arizona and eventually the world. This episode is about Saul Bass' 1974 science fiction film, Phase 4. Saul Bass was nothing less than a true Hollywood legend. His specialty was animation, and throughout his career designed some of the most clever and iconic opening title sequences of films ever made. Films like Spartacus, Psycho, Vertigo, North by Northwest, West Side Story, The Man with the Golden Arm, Seconds, Goodfellas, Casino. Bass also spent much of his career making unforgettable movie posters for films like Anatomy of a Murder, The Shining, Exodus, It's a Mad, 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 Mad World. He also worked as a visual consultant and storyboard artist. In the film Spartacus, he designed the key elements of the gladiatorial school. He also storyboarded the final battle between the armies of Spartacus and Marcus Licinius Crassus. In addition to creating the opening titles for West Side Story, he also storyboarded the opening dance fight scene, and most notably, created the 48-shot storyboard that would become the notorious shower stabbing sequence for the movie Psycho. And you may be as surprised to find this out as I was. Hitchcock wasn't really on board with that sequence at first. Hitchcock favored long, drawn-out sequences. He thought the jump cutting might seem too surrealistic and that audiences wouldn't like it or wouldn't get it. Bass also designed a lot of famous corporate logos for companies like Wesson Oil, the YWCA, Boys and Girls Clubs of America, Minolta, Alcoa, General Foods, Geffen Records. And in 1974, for the first and only time, Bass would throw his hat into the ring of directing. His first and only film feature, Phase 4. Phase 4 was written as a screenplay by screenwriter Mayo Simon. Previous to Phase 4, Simon had written the screenplay for the 1969 hard science space survival movie Marooned, which hasn't aged well. He also wrote screenplays for the TV movie Future World, which was the follow-up to Westworld. And he wrote the pilot for the Patrick Duffy TV series Man of Atlantis, which I will guiltily admit to loving as a kid. The director of photography on Phase 4 was Dick Bush, who worked on a lot of memorable films of the 70s and 80s, including Tommy, Sorcerer, Blood on Satan's Claw, Dracula AD, Lair of the White Worm, and my favorite Disney movie of all time, The Journey of Natty Gann. The film would star British stage and screen actor Nigel Davenport, who many will know for his memorable part as Lord Norfolk in the 1966 film A Man for All Seasons, and American character actor Michael Murphy as Dr. James Lesko. Murphy's been in countless TV shows and films, including Magnolia, Batman Returns, The Year of Living Dangerously, and TV series like Tilt, Rogue, Law and Order, The Bridge. So I'll give you the quick plot rundown and my recommendation and some trivia. After an unspecified celestial event, ants in a small rural valley in Arizona start displaying strange signs of intelligent behavior. And not just one species of ants, but all the species of ants in this valley stop fighting and all begin working together, eliminating predators, as well as doing damage to an unfinished housing development and causing a general evacuation of the area. An entomologist named Dr. Ernest Hubbs requests the assistance of a computer specialist with a cryptological background, Dr. James Lesko, who, in a tie-in from the last episode of the new show, works where? The Marine Institute at San Diego. Hubbs gets permission to build a small scientific research station near the ant colony, packed with computers and armed with an array of chemical defenses. As they survey the area, they find, among other things, strange crop circles and Easter Island-like standing figures that the ants have created out of mud. They realize that a farm nearby is still occupied and go to talk to the owners and let them know that they need to evacuate, but the farmers decide to stay. Days pass, but the ants refuse to appear or perform any kind of activity. Hubbs gets sick of it. He goes out to the standing figures with a grenade launcher and blows them all up. The colony goes into a frenzy of activity, and Lesko begins recording the sounds of the ant colony, trying to decipher their basic language. That night, the ants go on the attack. They attack the farm, destroy the farmhouse, and the farmer, his wife, their field hand, and their daughter, Kendra, get into a jeep and try to get to Hubbs' compound. At Hubbs' laboratory, the ants attack his jeep, shorting the battery and causing the jeep to explode, at which point Hubbs releases a yellow aerosol that kills everything surrounding their research facility, including the ants and the poor farmers. When Hubbs and Lesko go to survey the damage the following morning, they find, among other things, that the ants have actually bored holes into the victims' bodies and are still inside. They take the ants for samples, and they find the farmer's daughter Kendra still alive, hiding in the basement of one of the nearby houses. While Hubbs is explaining a series of life or death experiments he plans to put the insects through, Kendra sees the ants, has memories of her dead horse, and smashes the sample container on the lab table, forcing them to evacuate and gas the room they were in. During this, Hubbs gets bitten by the ants. Lesko, meanwhile, has almost figured out how to carry on a conversation with the colony. The next morning, they awake to find out that the ants have erected a set of natural mirrors around the facility in an attempt to cook them. Lesko manages to use the PA system as a form of sonar to determine which sound frequencies are not being bounced off of the mirrors. He directs the missing frequency at them at a high volume and manages to break apart several of the mirrors, but not before the heat shuts down their computer systems and all power. The bite on Hubbs' hand continues to get more misshapen and ugly looking. He becomes more and more deranged in his thinking, leaving Lesko free to try to communicate with the colony. He sends a message of a parallelogram. Later they return a message to him of a parallelogram with a circle drawn in it and a smaller circle inside the large circle, which Lesko believes indicates that the ants want one of the members inside of the research facility. Believing she's the one that the ants want, Kendra flees the complex early in the morning. She's attacked by the ants and disappears. Hubbs eventually identifies what he believes to be the mound where the queen of the ant colony is located, and also leaves the facility with Lesko chasing him. Before Lesko can stop him, Hubbs falls into a pit trap that the ants have created. They swarm over his body and consume him. Lesko returns to the facility, puts on a hazmat suit, gets a tank of blue insecticide, and heads out across the desert to try to stop the queen himself. When Lesko reaches the colony, he climbs down into an antechamber where he finds Kendra in a pit of sand. They reunite, and in a closing monologue, Lesko talks about how him and Kendra have been kept alive by the ants as part of their plan, apparently for dominating the world, and that he doesn't know what their purpose will be, but at some point they will be told. And the movie ends. Now, Phase 4 is a problematic film. On the one hand, it's very well shot, and typical of any Saul Bass project, is filled with strong, iconic visual images. Whether it's the ant crop circles, or the eerie standing figures, or the beautiful close-up ant photography done by nature photographer Kate Middleham. All really high quality, especially for the year. On the bad side, this film often has a very disjointed feeling. The scenes begin and end without a clear feeling of what time it is. Some of the dialogue is kind of cringeworthy. So this is a film I would mostly recommend to hardcore science fiction fans only, or anyone interested in visual design, because the film is full of terrific visual design. It's a film that definitely feels smarter than most other science fiction of the period. The scenes, for example, where Lesko is using the computer to break down the ants' communication doesn't seem far-fetched. And just speaking in general, I like science fiction movies where there's a good scientist, bad scientist tension, where, again, like in Day of the Dolphin, Lesko represents a kind of new scientific naturalism and Silicon Valley aesthetics, and Hubbs represents the old school man versus nature scientist, who also seems completely ethically compromised, as he has no reaction at all to having caused the death of the farmers. Some trivia: the interiors in this film were shot at Pinewood Studios. The exteriors for the Arizona Valley were all shot in Kenya. And I really felt bad for actress Lynne Frederick, who plays the farmer's daughter, Kendra. She had been recommended to Saul Bass by actor Nigel Davenport, who had worked with her years before in a film called No Blade of Grass. Apparently she was given quite a hard time. Among other things, she was in her early 20s, but the character she was playing was supposed to be a teenager, so she had to wear a corset to keep her breasts restricted. Apparently her weight was an issue, or her weight because she had to wear this corset was an issue, so she apparently was put on a diet of coffee and chicken broth. And apparently because she was supposed to be a farm girl from Arizona, director Saul Bass made her read her lines over and over and over again to make sure there was no trace of a British accent. And I just find it kind of weird that they gave this young British actress such a hard time about fitting into this part as a resident of Arizona when they were shooting Kenya for Arizona. Linda Blair was actually being considered for the part of Kendra, and they got her to audition for it, but at the time The Exorcist was a huge property and they could not afford her. I also wanted to mention the music. The orchestral score for the film was done by UK composer Brian Gascoigne. He did soundtracks like The Dark Crystal and The Emerald Forest. I don't think his soundtrack really works that well in this film. It's very funereal sounding, something you would expect to hear more in a movie about the Black Plague than about a scientific investigation. But the film also had electronic sound montages done by musicians David Vorhaus and Dennis Briscoe, and all of the electronic ambience that they came up with for the film is still really good and gives the film a wonderful, eerie quality. Now, Saul Bass never made another movie after this, and apparently it didn't have to do so much with the film's reception, which was but more to do with the fact that Paramount apparently hacked the film up in post-production, which one could surmise from looking at the film's short 84-minute runtime. In addition, there was also an excised ending montage sequence that ran about 4 or 5 minutes that was removed from the film by Paramount. It did resurface, I think, in 2012 and was shown with the original film at the Alamo Drafthouse. It was only ever shown once. You can look it up on YouTube, but it primarily shows images of Kendra and Lesko running around in what appears to be a giant maze in some sort of hive-like structure that the ants have created. And we see other humans in little cubicles who seem to be imprisoned within this mega colony. Personally, I love this movie. It was a film I discovered in a clearance bin at an old VHS store back in the 80s. I thought it was visually striking when I first saw it. I still think it's visually striking. And it's also a film that when you watch it, you can get the sense that this might have been a better film had it not been tampered with. So yes, I have a soft spot for Phase 4. It is by no means a perfect film, but it is a provocative and interesting science fiction film. I wish I could interview some of the people who had been in it just to figure out more about the production. There's literally no record of the making of this film, and I think that's a shame, especially considering its source. Phase 4 was, in fact, a film that I borrowed heavily from when I was writing my short story, Abandoned Mall. I wanted to have that same kind of back and forth between an unethical scientist and a more empathetic one, interacting with a mutated insect colony that was much larger and complex than it first appeared. So what are some of your favorite not so great science fiction movies that still have some great elements of design or storytelling in them? Let me know in the comments below. And if you liked what you heard, hit the like button and subscribe, and consider becoming a patron of the new show. I could use your help. Alright, this is Random Rob signing off. Till next time, take care. The new show is made possible by generous support from viewers like Tony, Luz, Arnell, Skipnick, Christopher, Eric, and B. Thank you so much for your support.